Narayana IS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottawar and I'll be taking up the daily news analysis for The Hindu and Indian Express. I'll discuss 5 most important articles from these two newspapers in a comprehensive manner. If we look at the first article mentioned on page number 11 of Indian Express, it talks about constitutional morality. We'll understand what is constitutional morality, the arguments supporting it and the arguments against it to come to a conclusion. The second article mentioned on page number 9 of The Hindu, it talks about the research that is going on throughout the world in the science and technology field. We'll understand the focus of India which lies on the nanotechnology, its applications and its challenges. The third article mentioned on page number 10 of The Hindu, it talks about CBI jurisdiction. We need to understand the importance of this agency, general consent and special consent, and understand the issues arising between center and the state governments. The next article, which is mentioned on Indian Express page 14, it talks about Falcon 9 rocket. The rocket has seen a failure very recently, so we will understand what is this rocket and the technology behind it. The next article is mentioned on page number 10 of Indian Express. It talks about a framework given by Supreme Court related to representation of persons with disabilities. We'll understand Supreme Court's concerns and the rights of the creative artists. After this, we'll also discuss some practice questions so that you will get an idea about what kind of questions can be expected from these articles. So let's get started. The first article talks about constitutional morality. It says the law is human and not divine. So from UPSC exam perspective, we need to understand what is constitutional morality and we need to understand some of the cases, Supreme Court cases related to constitutional morality. From the syllabus perspective, GS paper 2 mentions about the evolution of constitution and this constitutional morality has evolved with time. Second, GS paper 4 ethics, it mentions about ethics in human action. How do we evaluate human action? There also constitutional morality comes into picture. Now before we discuss the article, let's look at one of the previous year question to get an idea about what kind of question can be expected. What is meant by the term constitutional morality? How does one uphold constitutional morality? So it's a straightforward question. So you can expect any straightforward question from this topic. If we look at the context of this news, in recent years we have observed that Indian judiciary is time and again taking up cases which involves religious practices or religious doctrines. You look at instant triple talaq, you look at Sabrimala issue, all these are having some religious connotation. And whenever Supreme Court gets into religious sphere, the question of constitutional morality comes into picture. To understand constitutional morality, we first need to understand what is morality. If I ask you or any other person, eating non-vegetarian food is right or wrong, is ethical or unethical? And if I check the answer, a person coming from West Bengal coastal area, he may say, sir, we have been eating this non-vegetarian food since years, since 2000 years. It is our convention, it is part of our culture also. So we eat it, nothing wrong in this. This person is calling it ethical and this is his morality. Now if I look at some other example, a person who belongs to Jain religion, he says that eating non-vegetarian food is completely wrong. It is absolutely wrong because it involves hinsa or violence. And violence is not a good thing. That's why it is an unethical act. Now the answer is coming from his religion. And that's why we are calling his morality is different from the morality of the other person. Here, morality refers to principles and standards that determine which actions are right or wrong. A person will decide what is wrong, what is right on the basis of something. That something is the principle or the standard. Now this principle can come from anywhere. It can come from your religion. It can come from your culture, philosophy, law. Sometimes some individuals read laws and now they talk only about the laws. They look at the issue from legal perspective. For example, in case of instant triple talaq, a person looking at it from the law says that equality is very important. He will not talk about the culture as such. So his morality is driven by law. Someone may come up with social influence, someone may have personal experience, someone may have education, or a person may have empathy. There can be a person who may say non-vegetarian food eating it is wrong because we love animals, we have empathy for animals, and not because it is mentioned in religion as such. So the morality can be driven by anything. Now, in this case, if your morality is driven by the constitutional values or constitutional principles, it is said to be constitutional morality. For example, in the Constitution of India, some values are clearly mentioned, such as justice, equality, liberty. And if a person, while judging any action as right or wrong, thinks about these values, considers these standards, in that case, the person is driven by constitutional morality and not the traditional norms or traditional practices. Now, this concept has came into picture with the publication of a book written by George Grote. He mentioned that constitutional morality is a paramount reverence for the forms of constitution. That means you are respecting the constitution, putting the constitution above anything, even above your holy religious books also. And in case of India, this constitutional morality was first used by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, if we look at the evolution of cases which supported this idea of constitutional morality, especially over the societal norms or social morality. The first case is of 2009 Nas Foundation case, in which Supreme Court decriminalized the consensual same-sex relationship. Earlier, same-sex relationship was considered to be a crime. Court has said that constitutional morality says it is nothing wrong as such, and the individual right and the equality is more important. The second case is of 2018 Sabrimala case, in which the temple authorities were not allowing women of certain age to enter into the temples, and this goes against the principle of equality, the gender equality or the non-discrimination principle mentioned in the constitution. Supreme Court said that we will allow the women to enter into temple. The next case is Navtej Singh Johar case of 2018. Earlier, IPC section 377 used to mention that homosexuality is a crime. But Supreme Court says constitutional morality says that freedom of any individual is important. Dignity of any individual is important. That's why homosexuality is not wrong as such. Next, Joseph Shine case of 2018. Supreme Court says that even adultery cannot be criminalized. You cannot call someone as a criminal just because he or she got into adultery. And here also the equality principle, the principle of dignity came into picture, which is part of the constitutional morality. Now let's look at the arguments given by a major chunk of society favoring the constitutional morality. Firstly, they say that if we want to protect the fundamental rights of individuals, we have to give priority to the constitutional morality over the social morality. For example, we have to give importance to justice, equality, dignity over the social norms or cultural norms. Secondly, earlier we used to practice untouchability. But what we said, we are a progressive society, so we will remove untouchability. Society accepted untouchability earlier, but then we said it is an outdated social norm, and for progress, we need to remove it. So constitutional morality is required. Third, if we want a uniform set of law throughout the country, then also you have to be driven by constitutional morality. For example, people talk about uniform civil code. They say that there is no one law when it comes to civil code in India. Hindus have different law, Muslims have different law, other community has different law. So for uniform law, what you need is all people should be driven by constitutional morality rather than their cultural or religious morality. Fourth, there is a responsibility of judges. That responsibility is of being the guardian of the constitution. In case there is a political party who is having majority support, they come up with a particular law which goes against the constitutional values. In that case, to protect it, Supreme Court comes into picture. Supreme Court says that to protect minority rights against the majoritarian impulse, we need constitutional morality. Now let's look at some of the arguments given by the other side who are against constitutional morality. Firstly, they say this concept is very ambiguous and very subjective. There is no clear definition of constitutional morality which is acceptable to every individual living in this society. One judge may talk about something else, the other person may talk about something else. In this case, the interpretation may differ from one judge to the other judge, and there are chances that the personal beliefs of a particular judge may lead to his morality and then the constitutional morality. So a judge may have his or his own beliefs which are in support of a political party, and that may create subjectivity. Then there can be judicial overreach. Judiciary may go beyond its sphere. Judiciary has to adjudicate cases, but making of laws is part of parliament or legislature. Judiciary may bring a law as such by saying that we are following constitutional morality. Then there is cultural sensitivity. People are very sensitive about their culture or religious practices. And if you say that will not allow one particular practice, people may not accept it. It would become difficult and there will be friction in the society. Then, if you want to bring any kind of reform, the process should be democratic. It cannot be a top-down approach in which Supreme Court is saying we cannot allow something. The process should be democratic and it should respect the religious diversity. So what Supreme Court or we need to do is that we should go for a balanced approach wherein we are respecting the religious diversity as well as we are respecting the constitutional principles. Why? Because it's a complex issue, it's a debatable issue. And with this harmonious balance, we can come to a good conclusion. So the next article is about nanotechnology. Recently, a comparative study has been conducted around the world and it has shown that Indian scientists are specifically focusing on nanotechnology. So we will understand what is nanotechnology, its challenges, its applications in detail. From the syllabus perspective, in GS Paper 3, science and technology developments, their applications and effects in everyday life has been mentioned. So we can relate it with it. If we look at a previous year question, we'll get a good idea about what kind of questions can be asked on these topics. The question is, with reference to the use of nanotechnology in health sector, which of the following statements is or are correct? First, targeted drug delivery is made possible by nanotechnology, and nanotechnology can largely contribute to gene therapy. To answer this question, we just need a brief understanding of nanotechnology. So what is it? We know the context already. Nanotechnology is the science, engineering and application of any material or device at the nanoscale, and you can compare a nanoscale with the meter scale. So 1 nanometer is equal to 1 billionth of a meter. Such a small scale it is. And when we operate or manipulate any material at this scale, we have to deal with it at atomic or molecular level. So this is nanotechnology. Whenever you operate any product, if you are building a device which is of this scale, then that device is made up of nanotechnology. This is what we can say. Now, if we look at the applications of nanotechnology, firstly, in the medicine field, the application is for the drug delivery. Let's assume you got a cancer and you want a specific drug to be delivered at the particular location where the cancer is existing. So you can make use of nanotechnology. You can send the drug exactly at that location in a precise manner using nanotechnology. Apart from that, if you want your diseases to be detected earlier, in that case, you can make use of some nanoscale sensors and imaging techniques also. Then if you look at the application in electronics, we are observing that devices are getting smaller day by day. The smartphone, size of smartphone is reducing day by day. In the same manner, the transistors, the chips or the mobile phone displays, we can reduce their size using the nanotechnology. Then in the energy sector, if we are using a solar cell, if we are using any kind of battery, we can reduce the size and weight of that battery using nanotechnology. Apart from that, if you are building any material, you are constructing a building, and if you use the nano material, then again the size will be smaller, it will be stronger than any other material, and the weight will be less. Then for coating of any material also we can use it. For example, for anti-corrosion, anti-scratch, self-cleaning surfaces, we can use nanotechnology. Then for environmental purpose also, we have water treatment plant in which we have polluted water and we want to treat it. In that case, we can make use of nanotechnology and nanofiltration system, and it will filter the water at nanoscale. Then we can control the pollution in the atmosphere also. We see the PM 2.5, PM 10 particles. At nanoscale, if we use the nanoscale catalyst, we can reduce these emissions. Then when it comes to consumer goods, so for example, textiles or the clothes that you wear, if we use the nanotechnology, we can bring antibacterial fabrics. So you will not get caught by any bacteria as such if you use these fabrics. Then in cosmetic products also, specifically using nanotechnology will make those products better. Now, if we look at the research areas which were being focused in the nanotechnology sector by Indian scientists specifically, then first comes is the nanofluids. Now, nanofluids are just like any other fluids that we use in industries. But the difference is that they have better thermal conductivity. So, if you want to transfer heat from one place to another place, let's say you are using a coolant, then in that case, if you are using nanofluid, it will be a better coolant. The second is the silver nanoparticles. In case of cancer, silver nanoparticles is very useful because it has antimicrobial and anti-cancer properties. So you can use it as a cancer therapy too. The third one is zinc oxide nanoparticles. These are very famous particles which are used in electronics, optoelectronics, ceramics. When you make any LED or any solar cell, there also you make use of it. Also in the cosmetic products, zinc oxides are used. Now let's discuss some of the challenges associated with nanotechnology. First is the exposure concern. If you are exposed to nanotechnology again and again, the inhalation, the ingestion, the skin contact can have some long-term effects on your body. Secondly, there can be some environmental effects. For example, if such nanoparticles get into the food chain or food web, leading to the bioaccumulation of these nanoparticles, it can cause a very dangerous harm to the ecosystem and biodiversity. Thirdly, for surveillance and weapons also, nanotechnology can be used. For example, for developing some drones at nano level, or some video surveillance mechanism can be developed, and this can cause an internal security threat for India or any other country. Apart from that, for developing countries, the cost of the product could be very high, and the process of developing nanotechnology is very complex. And when it comes to countries like India, where research and development is not given much importance, it becomes very difficult. Also, there is a problem of funding. Whether it is India or any other developing country, they have lack of financial resources to fund nanotechnology. Then there is problem of regulation. In India, there is no single regulatory body which can oversee and regulate this nanotechnology sector in total. Now, if we have to conclude, we can say that by implementing some robust regulatory framework, then investing in the modern research infrastructure and promoting some ethical practices, that means you will not misuse nanotechnology for a different cause, then India can actually harness all the benefits of nanotechnology and we can grow it as a sector. So the next article is about the jurisdiction of CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation. As it is a central agency, we need to study about CBI and its powers. We need to study Article 131 mentioned in the Constitution of India and the general consent provided to CBI. It is important from the syllabus perspective, GS Paper 2, which includes statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies, and CBI is one of them. We'll first look at one previous year question so that you can get an idea of what kind of question UPSC has already asked. The jurisdiction of the Central Bureau of Investigation regarding lodging an FIR and conducting probe within a particular state is being questioned by various states. However, the power of the states to withhold consent to the CBI is not absolute. Explain with special reference to the federal character of India. Now, to answer such question, you need to understand the powers of CBI in detail. Let's discuss the article. The context of the article is related to a court case that is going on in the Supreme Court. What has happened is that usually if CBI wants to operate in any state, they need a consent or permission from that state. For example, if CBI wants to file a case against a central government employee working in state of West Bengal, then CBI first needs to take permission from the West Bengal government to file that case, to operate there, to investigate and come to a conclusion. But if the state government does not provide that consent, in that case CBI cannot operate. What has happened in this case is that the West Bengal government earlier used to provide consent to the CBI. But on November 16, 2018, they had withdrawn this general consent, and that's why they are saying CBI cannot file any case or investigate any case in West Bengal. But still, central government is using this CBI as an agency to target political party who is running the state of West Bengal. This is what West Bengal government is saying. Now, because constitutionally or in legal terms, CBI is not supposed to operate, this is a constitutional overreach done by central government. This is what the state government is saying. Now, in this case, the West Bengal government has went to Supreme Court and not High Court or any lower court. Why? Because there is Article 131 of the Constitution. It clearly says that if there is any issue between central government and any state government, or maybe there are multiple state governments, or if there is any issue between one state and the other state, in that case, you can only go to Supreme Court and no other court. It is mentioned as the original jurisdiction and exclusive jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Original means you do not need to go for any kind of appeal. You can directly reach out to Supreme Court. Exclusive means there is no other court who is capable of taking such cases, because these cases are of federal nature. Now, in this case, Article 131 clearly mentions one more thing, that such case should involve question of law or fact. That means if there is a conflict between central government and state government, but it's a political conflict. For example, in West Bengal, TMC is in power. In Central, BJP is in power. There can be political conflict because of different ideologies. But for those conflicts, you cannot reach out to Supreme Court under Article 131. Only if there is a problem when it comes to legal status of something, legal status of any particular law or any agency, or there is existence or extent of legal right. In that case only you can reach out to Supreme Court. This is what 131 article clearly mentions. Now, if you read about CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, it was established in 1963 by a resolution. I'm saying resolution and not any law as such. That means CBI has not been brought in by constitution. It is not a constitutional body because there is no mention of CBI in constitution. It is not a statutory body because there was no law made by parliament as such. But it is brought by resolution by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Initially, this body was brought in to curb the cases related to bribery or corruption. So no other area was mentioned apart from corruption as such. But with time, this agency's role has been expanded and multiple other things had been provided to this agency, such as any high profile case, any economic offense, or any conventional crime also. Now, if you look at CBI, as there is no law which created CBI, so how come the powers of CBI come into picture? So we can see Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946. CBI derives its powers from this act directly. And you will see that the director of CBI is nothing but Inspector General of Police for the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. Now, moving ahead, this agency now acts as a nodal agency for Interpol also. Interpol is an international agency which operates in such a way that they come up with some database of criminals who are working throughout the world. Apart from that, whenever CBI is operating, it requires the state's consent, as we said. But this consent is of two types. One is general consent, other one is case-specific consent. See, if a state has provided general consent to CBI, that means CBI can come, arrest anybody, investigate the case, and they don't need to take permission every time they come. But if such general consent is not provided, in that case, CBI will have to go to state government every time, ask for the permission every time they want to go for any new case. And that is case-specific consent. Now, if you look at the present condition, there are many states who have not provided this general consent. Earlier, they used to provide, but then they withdrawn that consent. And these states are West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Kerala, Mizoram, Punjab, Rajasthan, Telangana, and Meghalaya. And why they are doing it? Because in these states, we observe there is a different political party apart from the central government. And there is a political conflict going on. They are accusing the central government, saying that the central government is misusing CBI against these opposition parties. The next article is about the failure of Falcon 9 rocket. And it is important from exam perspective, as we need to have some awareness in the field of space. Syllabus also mentions in GS paper 3 awareness in the field of space. We can look at a previous year question to get an idea about what kind of questions can be asked about space technology. It says, what is Grease Lightning 10, GL10, recently in the news? Is it electric plane tested by NASA, or solar-powered two-seater aircraft designed by Japan, or space observatory launched by China, or reusable rocket designed by ISRO? Now, if we look at the article, what it exactly says is that there is a company called SpaceX, which is owned by Elon Musk. This company had earlier produced a rocket called Falcon 9, and this rocket was very famous for being one of the most successful and most reliable rockets in the world. It has already completed 300 successful flights. But this rocket has very recently seen a failure. Since 2015, this is the first failure by Falcon 9 rocket. Now, why this failure occurred? This has occurred due to the leakage of liquid oxygen from the second stage of this rocket. Usually what happens is that any rocket is made up of multiple stages. Stage 1 may have different fuel, stage 2 have different fuel, stage 3 may have different fuel. And to burn that fuel, you require oxidizer. In this case, this liquid oxygen is that oxidizer. Without this liquid oxygen, you cannot burn that fuel. That means the engine will not work without this. And it has happened in this case that this liquid oxygen has got leaked. Now, if we talk about Falcon 9 very specifically, it is famous for being a partially reusable rocket. Now, conventionally, any rocket that we send to space, it is not a reusable rocket as such. As I told you, it has multiple stages, and what happens is that when the fuel of first stage gets exhausted, then this part falls back on the earth. When the fuel of second stage gets exhausted, then that part also falls back on the earth. And this is how a satellite is sent in the space. But whatever part that is falling back on earth, it is not made for reuse as such. So it is completely a waste product for us. Now in this case, Falcon 9 becomes very special because it has reusable technology. This rocket only has two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. And out of this stage 2, this stage 1 can be reused again. This falls back vertically on the Earth's surface and we can reuse it again. The second stage is not obviously reusable as such. That's why we are calling it partially reusable. If we look at these two stages, first stage is having Merlin engine and aluminium lithium alloy tanks. And the second stage has single Merlin engine. Now, what is reusable launch vehicle? We have understood in brief, but please understand its importance. If you are able to recover the rocket again, that means for the next mission, you do not need to make the same rocket again. That means the cost of the project will be reduced for multiple missions. But there are some challenges when it comes to developing a reusable launch vehicle or a reusable rocket. First is ensuring the structural integrity for multiple launches. Means you send a rocket, then it falls back, but is it in the same condition, intact condition to be used for next project? That's a questionable thing. Second, when the rocket re-enters in the atmosphere of Earth, it has to go through extreme heat and extreme stress, which can cause some changes in the structure of that launch vehicle. Apart from that, whether it will be very much reliable for the next mission is a questionable thing. Maybe instead of satellites, we are sending a human being in the space. So can we consider this particular launch vehicle a reliable one? Then there is some environmental and economic impact. Now we understand that economically it would be beneficial for us. But from environmental perspective also, it is very good. Why? Because when you are sending multiple rockets to the space and many such stages remain in the space itself, it causes increase in the space debris. So if you are using the same rocket multiple times, the space debris can be reduced, which will be very good for the environment. As a conclusion, we can say that for future of space exploration and commercialization of the space sector, we need such frequent and cost-effective access to space which can be provided by reusable launch vehicles. The next article is about the persons with disabilities, and we should have a brief idea about the rights of persons with disabilities. We can relate it with the syllabus part GS Paper 1 Indian Society and Social Justice and GS Paper 2 Judiciary, as judiciary has given a framework. We can look at a previous year question on the same topic. It says the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 remains only a legal document without intense sensitization of government functionaries and citizens regarding disabilities. Comment. So to answer such questions, you should have a brief idea about the rights of persons with disabilities. Now, if we look at the context of this article, there was a movie called Aankh Micholi, against which some activists went to Delhi High Court and then Supreme Court. They said that this movie shows disability in a very wrong manner and it actually perpetuates stereotypes and prejudices against disabled individuals. And that's why such movies should not be produced. Now, this goes against the rights of artists who are producing any movie or any theatrical program. Now, in this case, what Supreme Court has said is that court has provided a specific framework and given some guidelines. Now, these guidelines are saying that whenever you are dealing with the subject of disability, you should show some responsibility. Court said that we can use human rights model of disability to understand this. Now, if you ask a medical practitioner, he may say disability is something very unnatural. But if you look at it from the human rights perspective, they say disability is a natural part of human diversity. Humans are very diverse. Everyone is different. And that's why you cannot consider disability as something unnatural. And because it is natural, we should ensure that any person with disability should be having complete participation and inclusion in our society. Now, in this case, we need to understand a convention that India had earlier signed. The convention is named as United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. India signed this convention in 2007, and to ensure that all those articles, all those clauses of this conventions get into practice, India brought this act called Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. This act provides a broad definition of disability. It includes total 21 conditions, including mental illness, autism, then cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, and multiple sclerosis. Now, here we need to understand that the Act provides for the children with disabilities in the age group of 6 and 18. They should be provided free education in India. And this is the obligation on the government. Then it also provides for 4% reservation in the government jobs when it comes to persons with disabilities. But this reservation is only in government jobs. When it comes to private sector, the Act says that we are going to encourage private sector to provide some inclusive policy for the employment of such persons with disabilities. Now, if we look at the recent guidelines provided by Supreme Court, it clearly says that the media houses or the mainstream production houses, they have to go for a nuanced approach. Instead of being insensitive, they have to be more responsible and more sensitive towards disabled individuals. So, Supreme Court even talked about this recent movie called Shrikant, which has used this nuanced approach. So, Whether these guidelines will be very much helpful or not, what will be its effect, we will have to see in the coming years. That's it. Now let's discuss some of the practice questions so that we can check whether we can recall whatever we have studied till now. First question is, consider the following statements regarding Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. The Act aligns with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which India ratified in 2010. This is wrong because India ratified it but in the year 2007. Next statement, the Act expands the definition of disability to include the conditions such as mental illness, autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis. This is correct. The Act provides for the right to free education for children with disabilities aged 6 to 18 years in an appropriate environment. This is also correct. Fourth, the Act reserves 8% of the government jobs for persons with disabilities. This is wrong. India has provided only 4% reservation to PWD candidates. So, these two statements are wrong. So, 2 and 3, that means B is the right answer. Now, next question. Which of the following statements is correct regarding general consent principle related to Central Bureau of Investigation, that is CBI? First, it follows CBI to operate in any state without requiring the state's consent. No, it requires consent. It allows CBI to investigate cases within a state without seeking permission for each individual case. This is the right answer. We are talking about general consent and not case-specific consent as such. Third statement, it mandates that CBI must obtain consent for each specific case it investigates within a state. This is about the case-specific or special consent that is required. And fourth, it prevents a state from withdrawing consent once granted. This is wrong. State can go for withdrawal. So the answer is B. Next question. This question talks about Central Bureau of Investigation again. It says, the CBI was established by an act of parliament. No, there was no act as such, but resolution by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Then second, jurisdiction of CBI extends across India and it can investigate any case within any state without state's consent. This is completely wrong. State's consent is required. Third, the director of CBI is appointed by a committee consisting of the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, Chief Justice of India or Judge of the Supreme Court nominated by Chief Justice of India. We never read anything as such till now. The director of CBI is nothing but IG of Delhi Special Police Establishment. The fourth statement is the CBI functions under the superintendence of Ministry of Home Affairs. This is correct. So answer will be only D3 only. The next question is about the nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is the science, engineering and application of materials and devices with structures on the nanometer scale 1 to 100 nanometers. That is absolutely correct. Second, silver nanoparticles have applications in antimicrobial and anti-cancer therapy. We studied this point already. Zinc oxide nanoparticles are used in optoelectronics, ceramics and cosmetics. This also we studied. And next, India has a single regulatory body overseeing the development and use of nanotechnology. This is wrong. India doesn't have any such regulatory body till now. So fourth will be wrong. 1, 2, 3. That means A is the right answer for this question. Now the next question is about Falcon 9 rocket. Consider the following statements regarding Falcon 9 rocket and reusable launch vehicles. Falcon 9 is a partially reusable rocket developed by Blue Origin. Thus, this partial reusable is the right thing, but it is not by Blue Origin. Rather, it is made by SpaceX company of Elon Musk. So, this statement is absolutely wrong. Next, reusable launch vehicles are designed to be recovered and reused for multiple missions, which can reduce cost of space access, which is very obvious, will reduce the cost. So, second statement is right. So, answer is B, only 2. Now let's look at one of the mains practice question 2. The question says, how has the Indian judiciary utilized constitutional morality to address issues related to social justice and equality? Illustrate your answer with relevant case laws. Now, the major focus is on constitutional morality and how judiciary has been utilizing it, this we have to show. So first we will introduce this answer by defining what is constitutional morality, and then we will link it with the judiciary, how Indian judiciary comes into picture when it comes to constitutional morality. Then we will show the role of judiciary in a specific manner. We'll say that the interpretation of constitution remains as a responsibility of judiciary, and hence the constitutional morality will again come into picture. Then we will have to explain this relationship of constitutional morality with social justice and equality also. So we'll have to talk about the values and principles mentioned in the Constitution of India. Then the question clearly asked us to mention the relevant case laws also. So we will also mention some case laws. For example, this Naz Foundation case, Sabrimala case, Navtesh Singh Johar case, Joseph Shine case. We'll mention each case and a brief discussion about it mentioning Supreme Court judgment. Then we have to also discuss the challenges or criticism which goes against the constitutional morality, and then we can come to the conclusion wherein we will discuss that there should be some continuous evolution in the legal spirit, and the legal interpretation should have some adaptations also, so that we can ensure that reforms take place in society but in a democratic manner. So this is how you can solve any question from this topic. This is all for now. Please like, share and subscribe to the Narayana IAS Academy official YouTube channel for further updates.